Hello, this is Damien O'Sullivan from DAF, based at Kingaroy. I'm one of the climate coordinators based throughout the state that looks after the Queensland State Government Drought Relief Assistance Scheme. And today we'll be looking at the eligibility for accessing a returning from agistment transport subsidy for stock that are in drought declared areas. So it's worthwhile just having a look at the Drought Relief Assistance Scheme and the types of subsidy assistance available. So drought declared properties may be eligible for a fodder transport subsidy, water transport subsidy, and for the emergency water infrastructure rebate. And properties that have had their drought declaration revoked may be eligible for the returning from agistment freight subsidy and the restocking freight subsidy. It's worth remembering sometimes just what the whole idea of the scheme was when it was originally set up, and that's to maintain the breeding flock and herd of the state. So the other criteria that's looked at in setting up this scheme is about how we can protect the land resource. This is a Queensland government subsidy, not a federal subsidy. And the other thing to remember is that each PIC number or property under the scheme can access $20,000, and if they need to access more than that, they can apply to have a drought management plan and access up to $30,000 under the scheme in one financial year. So today we'll be looking at the returning from agistment subsidy, and it applies to the return movement of all stock, breeders, non-breeders, and those animals born while on agistment in the 12 months after the revocation of your drought status. That can be extended to 24 months for the local drought committee. The transportation distance is up to a maximum of 1,250 kilometres, and the actual subsidy is 100% of the total freight costs for the core breeders and their progeny. If breeders are forced off agistment and have to return to the property of origin, they don't have to incur a 16-week suspension on any other subsidies, provided you can give some documentary evidence to show that the stock were forced off agistment. The other stock that can be returned to the property are weaners up to 6 months old if there's no weaning facilities available on the agistment property, and you also need a stat deck just to indicate that that was the case, and that's why you need to return weaners to the property. Other criteria to be eligible: the property or the shire's got to be revoked from the drought declaration prior to the introduction of any livestock returning to the property of origin. The agisted stock have got to return to their property of origin. The agisted stock have got to be owned by you and have to be grazed on your property for at least 3 months before they were sent to agistment. Stock sent to agistment while your property was drought declared or sent to agistment in the 2-month period immediately prior to declaration can be eligible for the subsidy. Stock have got to be on agistment for at least 2 months. Obviously they've got to return from the agistment by the most direct practical route, and you must make the application within 6 months for the return to access that subsidy. If you want to return stock from agistment before that drought declaration is lifted, you really need to think about individually revoking your drought declaration for your own property. But it's worth remembering that you won't be able to access any drought subsidies for 12 months after that period of time from when you've revoked your own individual drought declaration. A lot of people ask the question about trading and agisting, but if stock are purchased and moved onto a property while it still remains drought declared, there's a 16 weeks suspension for the claiming of any subsidies under the scheme. If agistment stock are brought onto the property, no subsidies under the scheme can be claimed while the agistment stock remain on the property. So just remember, this is really just a brief overview of the returning from agistment subsidy. You need to look at and read the guidelines carefully. Check to see if your situation is eligible for the subsidy. There's some critical dates as to when stock may have been moved to determine whether you may be eligible or not. While you've got 12 months to return from agistment after the lifting of a drought declaration, those freight applications have got to be received within 6 months of any movement. Otherwise, the claims outside that period may not be paid. Main thing to do is ask if you have any queries. So if you'd like some more information, you can go to the DAF Queensland website where you can find the application forms and details of the assistance. If you've got any questions, you can call 132523 for the customer service centre and ask for the drought section, and they'll be able to help you there with any of your questions. Likewise, any of the climate risk coordinators which are located at Charters Towers, Kingaroy, Longreach, Rockhampton and Toowoomba can also help, and they can be accessed on that customer service centre phone. Just remember though, this webinar is a brief summary of the criteria that you need to look at to assess these subsidies, and you can read the full criteria at the DAF website. So thank you for listening to the webinar today.